it's Krista. So today I want to take you on a grocery store tour of the bread aisle. But before we get there, I wanted to, here at home, show and tell you a few things that will be more helpful once we get to the store. So bread, super simple. It's made of 4 ingredients. It's flour, water, yeast, and salt. But that's where the simplicity ends, because when we get to the store, it's crazy overwhelming. But what I wanted to tell you, kind of without getting into too much of the science of it. So a grain is made up of 3 parts. There's the bran, there's the germ, and there's the endosperm. And so what happens when food manufacturers make bread is they actually remove the bran and the germ, because that lets them give bread a longer shelf life, and it lets them produce bread into that fluffy white texture that everybody loves. But so when that's removed, then that's where the fiber and the nutrients are. So when the bran and germ is removed, then they have to enrich it and add nutrients back in. So when you see enriched flour on breads and crackers and things like that, that means that the nutritious parts of the grain have been removed and they've had to add things back in. So with that in mind, I want to tell you, the best option when it comes to having a good whole grain, healthy, nutritious bread is going to be to make your own. And we have got some recipes. There's about 3 recipes on eatrealamerica.com where you can find a homemade rustic bread. So this is the cranberry walnut version. And it still blows my mind that you can make this in the Dutch oven. It is so delicious. But it is made with whole wheat white flour, salt, yeast, water. And then I added cranberries and walnuts. And so simple to make. So that's going to be absolutely the best option to make your own. So the next best thing that you can do is you can find a local bakery, or the farmer's market can be a great option, where you can find bread where you know exactly what is in it and you can see the ingredients in it. There is a bakery in Kansas City that we love to get bread from because we know exactly what's in it, and they retain all the nutrients of the whole grain, and it's just a great option. We buy multiples and we throw them in the freezer and keep them on hand. So that is kind of what I wanted to tell you. Now, there are 3 things that I want you to keep in mind when we get to the store. The first one is going to be the first ingredient should have the word whole in it. So it should say whole wheat flour, whole grain. The second thing I want you to keep in mind is all those fancy claims on the front of the package. I want you to ignore those. Do not pay attention to all the fanciness on the front of the package. And the third thing I want you to remember is to read the ingredient label. We're going to be looking for a short list of ingredients, because there's a couple tips and things to keep in mind. Is that, when you can tell when the whole grain is still intact or mostly intact, because we're going to be looking for fiber, 3 to 6 grams of fiber on the package. Ideally, we want it to have 2 grams or less of added sugar, and then really 140 milligrams or less of sodium. So those are some of the things we're going to look for. So let's head to the store. Okay, so here we are in the bread aisle, or the bread section of the store. And it's a little overwhelming. There's a few things to choose from. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show you. So this is a brand that we really like. And like this one, it's Dave's Killer Bread, good seed. Now the reason that we really like it is the very first ingredient is whole wheat. And so then because of that, when you look at the fiber, you've got 3 grams of fiber. So that's what we were talking about. There's also there's only 115 milligrams of sodium, 2 grams of added sugar, short list of ingredients, and we can recognize and understand everything that's on the ingredient. But it's a little pricey. It's a little bit pricier than some of the other options. So then look at this. So I want to show you what I was talking about. So on the ingredients, it says enriched wheat flour is the very first ingredient. There's not the word whole right there. And because of that, there's actually 0 grams of fiber. So that's a great way to tell that the bran and the germ have been removed. You're not getting the whole grain in this. Now, from the misleading standpoint, remember the front of the package that may look like it's got wheat in it? So this, probably you would think this is wheat bread. But if you look at the ingredients, the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. And again, if you look at the fiber, there's only 1 gram of fiber. So another misleading one is, this says 12 grain. This says made with the finest ingredients. So this would look like, and this is a seedy, grainy bread. So you would think that this is whole grain bread, or at least whole wheat bread. Nope, the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. And so again, if you look at the fiber, there's only 1 gram of fiber. So another thing that I wanted to show you is, so what we do is we try to look for these reduced sale prices on our favorite breads, because that's a great way to save some money, get the bread that you like, and we'll buy multiple loaves and stick them in the freezer. And so there's one other area of the store that has a really good bread option that I want to show you. It's in the frozen section. So let's go. So now we're in the freezer section. Now, excuse the Hot Wheel cars. But so this is another area that has some really good options. So this bread, Ezekiel, is a really good option. So the ingredients, actually, this is made from sprouted grain, which is still a really good option. Some people say that sprouted grains are easier to digest and have more nutrients, but I don't want you to get hung up on that, because it does just come down to personal preference. This is still a really good option, and you can tell it is because when you look at the first ingredient, it says sprouted wheat. Now, it doesn't say the word whole, but you can tell the whole grain is there because it has got 3 grams of fiber. And they have multiple different, there's a sesame one. They have multiple different options. The cinnamon raisin one is one that we actually use in our cinnamon raisin French toast bake on the eatrealamerica.com website. That's a really good one. But it really comes down to personal preference. Now, you'll notice these are a little bit higher. The reason they have to stay in the freezer is because they're made with sprouted grain. And what we'll do is we'll buy a loaf, we'll take it home, and we'll pull half out and keep it in the fridge and keep the other half in the freezer. But your store, like our store, has some less pricey options that are also really good. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to personal preference on the taste and the texture and how seedy the bread is. So, whether you're buying everyday sandwich bread for kids, or you're buying hamburger buns or hot dog buns or English muffins, I want you to keep these things in mind. So keep kind of those tips and those 3 things in mind when it comes to buying the best bread, and just do the best you can. And you can always make your own. Like I showed you before, that's always going to be the cheapest option. I mean, that can be as cheap as $1 a loaf. So I hope this helps. I hope it helps you realize you do not need a chemistry degree to navigate the bread aisle. But please let us know if you have any questions and what you think. Thank you.